Lads.
Okay, members, can I declare that the meeting is now open, and can remind members that all committee meetings held in public session are recorded and that all electronic devices, with the exception of the new committee tablets, interfere with the recording equipment in the committee rooms and even when they're in silent mode. Anyone in the public gallery can also switch off their phone or any electronic devices. Can I remind members to declare any interests where appropriate. In terms of today's business, members, you're all aware that this committee has been convened the committee has convened its emergency meeting this morning in order to receive a briefing on the current disruptions in Northern Ireland water services throughout Northern Ireland. Agenda item number 1 are apologies. The only one now, Stephen Mitry did say to me yesterday he intends to be here, but he could be running slightly late. Agenda item number 2 is the Department and the NI water briefing in terms of the disruption to water services. So we can advise. Bear with me, Can I welcome the Minister and his officials today? I don't think we need any introductions. I think most of them are familiar to most members. So, if you're happy enough, Minister, if maybe you want to make some formal opening first before we go into some formal questions, please.
Yes, Chairman, thank you very much indeed. And I see nameplates are available. Peter May, you will know, as Permanent Secretary to the Department, Sarah Venning as Chief Executive of Northern Ireland Water, and Sean McAleese, Customer Service Delivery Director. I'm grateful, Chairman, for the opportunity to update the committee this morning, and obviously joined by senior colleagues from both the Department and NI Water. I don't intend to revisit the issues covered by my statement yesterday, which most of you were present for and heard, I think. The latest position, Chairman, is that approximately 1,200 customers are currently off supply. Nearly all of those customers have been off for more than 24 hours. I want at the outset to apologise on my behalf and that of Northern Ireland Water to all those affected by loss of water over the period of this dispute. It is not acceptable for the price of an industrial dispute to be the type of disruption caused to the community. I can confirm that currently all water treatment works are operating normally and are producing water. As members know, it takes time to replenish reservoirs, and some properties, particularly on higher ground, will have to wait longer before their supply is restored. In addition, when the system has drained, there is a risk of airlocks developing, and these can be difficult to remove. I want to reassure members that there are teams of Northern Ireland Water staff on the ground today seeking to resolve those problems. It is the number one priority for everyone involved to ensure everybody has a normal, usable water supply through the distribution network. For those currently without supply, alternative arrangements involving static tanks and bottled water are available. Both I and NIWA fully recognise that these arrangements are inconvenient and cumbersome for those affected. They're only designed to be a stopgap measure where there is no alternative. Turning now to the industrial relations picture, Chairman, you will understand that I am limited in what I can say to the committee this morning. Northern Ireland Water Management and trade unions agreed at the end of their discussions early this morning that they would not make any public comment about where things have got to ahead of the meeting of trade unions that trade unions are holding with shop stewards, I understand, currently or almost simultaneously. I know the committee will be keenly interested in where things are, but neither I nor Northern Ireland Water Management are in a position to say more than that which has been publicly said already. I would, however, reinforce the strong message that I gave to management and unions at the Labour Relations Agency yesterday that this dispute needs to be resolved, and quickly. I believe that is possible. When the picture has clarified, I will make sure that the committee is kept informed. Finally, I recognise there is considerable unease about the scale and nature of the disruption. Some have expressed entirely understandable concerns that the problems have been concentrated in areas west of the ban, and others have expressed concerns that not enough has been done quickly enough to overcome the problems faced by members of the community. I can reassure members that while problems have been geographically concentrated, that there is no wider agenda at play here. Our efforts are on securing a workable water supply for everyone, irrespective of location. In terms of the response, the utility regulator would normally take an interest in any sustained problem with regard to supply to customers. I am therefore asking the utility regulator to undertake a review of response by Northern Ireland Water to the customer-facing aspects of the dispute, and I will provide the committee with the reference for that work once they are finalised. I'm happy to take your questions now, Chairman.
Okay, and thank you, Minister, for that. Can I remind members, maybe before we open the floor, in terms of questions, that if we can steer away from any comments in relation to the negotiations themselves, because it would be inappropriate for us to involve ourselves, and it's outside of our remit as well. So I don't think it would be helpful for any of us to stray into that particular area. So just to remind members maybe before we start that particular section. Minister, in terms of, so notwithstanding, everyone's aware of how severe the situation is and the difficulties that many people are facing today and probably this last number of weeks. But in terms of your emergency planning, can you maybe give us a bit of a description on how your emergency planning works and who all is involved in that?
Well, perhaps it might be helpful if Sarah or any colleagues want to contribute to that. But let me say that I have been proactively involved and kept informed on this dispute for its entirety. And it's not, but we do have emergency plans, and it might be helpful to run through these.
Within NI Water, we have a major incident plan, which is flexible enough that it can be flexed to deal with whatever incident faces us. So as we became aware of the impending industrial action, we instigated a major incident management regime. So we put in place a command team who operated on a 24-hour basis, so it was manned round the clock, and that team then had the oversight and the overview of all the water treatment works, the distribution network, and as issues arose, then put in place measures to mitigate those issues. So this industrial action has been running from the 22nd of December, and that regime has been in place all that time. So there have been a number of events that have occurred that through the team we have been able to resolve, and they haven't resulted in customer impact.
In addition, President, I could just mention the Department also has a major emergency response plan that was invoked before Christmas, and we've been playing our part in terms of the oversight arrangements that the Department has. That's not getting directly involved in the management of the water supply business. It's mostly about ensuring good communications across government, but we've been involved regularly on that basis.
Maybe on that point, Peter, could you tell us more about that plan, how often they met and who was involved?
I first convened a meeting of the Departmental Emergency Management Group on the 19th of December. That involved a range of representatives from the Department, from NI Water, from Transport Northern Ireland, from the Department of Health and Fire Service, and from OFM DFM. At that meeting, we agreed the regime that we would follow during the period, particularly over the Christmas and New Year period, which was the key purpose at that time. The department has then been party to all of the emergency responders calls that Northern Ireland Water has hosted, and we've held a number of meetings since then in terms of keeping stock of where things stand. And the key judgment to be made under the response plan is the level at which the response needs to be pitched as to whether...
So let me take you back to the 19th. So you formed an emergency meeting on the 19th?
Yes.
How many more meetings did you form after that? And when?
I held a further meeting on the 9th of January with departmental staff, and I've had a series of ad hoc meetings in between that with representatives, not formal meetings of the Departmental Emergency Management Group.
It is fair, of course, Chairman, to remember that the protocol that came into play before Christmas, immediately before Christmas, covering the Christmas New Year period, reduced some of the emergency aspects,
yeah.
but that wasn't in any way that anybody became complacent or wasn't looking at what was happening. And as I said in the House yesterday, I think I was kept fully informed on a daily, often more than once through the day, more regularly, and to be kept informed of the impact. But certainly the protocol which was put into play covering that Christmas New Year period did contribute to something of an easement of the situation.
Absolutely, and I think, I mean, that should be noted. I mean, everyone noticed. I mean, and I have to thank Sarah, because even yourself, Minister, prior to Christmas, you did, as the chair, you notified me in terms of what the position was. You did mention the protocol, and that has worked. However, going back to what you were at, Peter, so you had a meeting, a formal meeting on the 9th of January, at which stage the protocol would have ended. How many more formal meetings did you have after the 9th of January?
There were no other formal meetings of the
Departmental
Departmental
So there was no more formal meetings after the 9th
Group.
of January, and we're at the 21st of January. At what stage there was about 9,500 domestic properties without water, there's farms without water, and you didn't feel that it was necessary to call another formal meeting to try and intensify the negotiations or forge a solution to this particular problem?
The purpose of the Departmental Emergency Management Group is not to oversee the response to the industrial dispute. And I've been having multiple contacts daily with Northern Ireland Water about the management of that dispute as to how to take that forward.
But you didn't feel it was necessary to have a formalised meeting. I mean, why on the 19th, why on the 9th we have had and the Minister has been quite helpful to suggest that there was that protocol over the Christmas period, but we are now post the 9th of January, you've had no more formal meetings to try and actually intensify this situation to try and bring a resolution?
Well, the purpose of the Departmental Emergency Management Group is merely to assess whether it remains within the department's gift to be the lead department, or whether we needed to elevate the situation such that we would invoke the civil contingencies arrangements that involve OFM, DFM. So I don't want to mislead you to suggest that that's the key way in which this situation has been managed on an ongoing basis. If the situation had become significantly worse, then of course we would have...
What is worse than 9,500 properties without water?
There are clear guidelines set as to the different levels at which you raise emergencies, and a major emergency at a level beyond the one that we're at would involve, I think it's the guidance suggests it would be 80,000 customers being off supply for 5 days or so. I think that's approximately the sort of benchmark for the next level above. So this is a very serious incident. There are, and as we saw from previous incidents in 2010-11 and so on, it's possible for even more serious incidents to occur.
I'd also say, I think, Chairman, it's important that meetings of themselves are perhaps not the important thing. It's the actions and the knowledge that those actions are being put into place. And I'm absolutely clear that was the case, both in terms of departmental oversight of it and the hands-on day-to-day stuff operated by the company.
Yeah, Minister, we've seen you leaving a meeting yesterday with the Labour Relations, and I don't know if you actually got the stage to push ahead together in terms of that. I mean, obviously it sounds as if it's been more fruitful in terms of what we're hearing in the media today about the negotiations, and it's been much more intense. But how long did you stay at the Labour Relations with the two sides of the dispute?
I was at the Labour Relations Agency for well over an hour yesterday. I obviously had briefing from Labour Relations Agency staff involved to get how they approach things. I mean, I have to, and I want to place on record, I think, my appreciation, and I assume everyone's appreciation for the efforts of the Labour Relations Agency. I had the opportunity at the outset of the engagement between both the union representatives and the company to encourage and to implore the two sides to come together, narrow the differences, resolve the issues as a matter of urgency, and to effectively stay or remain in talks and negotiations. So that was my role. It wasn't my role to get directly involved. I think people would accept it's not my role to begin to negotiate on either way. But I made clear my view as Minister, and my view, I think, on behalf of both the Executive and indeed, and I hope the Assembly, and the wider public, of the absolute necessity to have this dispute resolved as quick as a matter of utmost speed.
When did you first make your view, put your view across to the both sides?
I had previously met in my office in the department, Clarence Court, last Wednesday, where again I met with the two sides and made my feelings heard. And of course I had in November or December, early December, taken the opportunity to meet both NI Water and the trade unions to encourage an early resolution of things.
Would you not accept, Minister, that you're open for criticism, given, I mean, in your own answer now, that was last week you actually met to make your feelings known to individuals? Would you not accept the criticism that it was a little too late?
No, I don't, because I've, and I say this respectfully, I've been actively engaged in this issue and encouraging resolution from its earliest point, and that continues today, and I think my record is clear on that, and I have sought. I've sought not to make a bad situation worse. I've sought, however, to concentrate minds and to remind people of the people whom we all serve, both NI Water as our customers and we as elected representatives, to bring normality to the water supply all over Northern Ireland.
Well, it seems to me, certainly, Minister, that going in approximately around the week of the 14th, that you weren't concentrating minds very quickly. Sean?
Well, thank you, Chair, and thanks for commenting with the committee. One of the issues raised yesterday, Danny, was why was it happening in the west of the band, parts of Tyrone, Derry, Fermanagh, specifically? Why was that happening? I know that you have went to some degree this morning on the radio to say that there are differences open in the east and the west. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, and Sarah will pick up any points, but essentially, water supplies to the east of the province and to other parts are provided under a PPP contract, right? Dalriada Water, I think, is the company involved, and they service and maintain the network in those areas. That is not the case with areas of the west. There's no reason for that except a historic reason, I suppose. That's what it's evolved into, and that I think, and I do want to dispel any suggestion that the West is being neglected or abandoned, and I recognise that for some that is a very real concern, but it is genuinely not the case, nor should it ever be the case, because everybody is entitled to a water supply and a proper water supply, and we seek to do that and maintain that. And so, you know, but those are the current arrangements, and you know that is the reason largely why the West in this instance has seen greater impact. because they are not, the other areas to the east are not impacted by the industrial action currently taken by the trade unions. Sarah, do you want to?
I suppose, maybe to add to that, we have, NI Water has 19 water treatment works. In the west, given its rural nature, there'll be a number of smaller works. A water treatment works, believe it or not, is like a chemical factory. It's like it's an industrial chemical process, the actual process of turning raw water into drinking water. So each factory, if you like, is fairly unique in how it operates and how it is run. And therefore you have to have a degree of knowledge and skill and expertise in running it and in dealing with any faults that occur. Of course, it is producing drinking water. So there are very strict rules or guidelines set up that if an alarm is received and the plant appears to be going out of specification, if you like, the plant will shut down. So for those reasons, lots of smaller works, smaller distribution networks, therefore less water in storage, a plant that will shut down for safety reasons. And if you don't have the expertise to go in and get that plant up and running again, the impact is felt sooner rather than later. So plants, during the course of this industrial action, there were water treatment plants to the east side of Northern Ireland that did experience alarms, that did shut down, but the combination of having storage in the system and the ability to get the works back up and running again, to have been able to do that, meant that widespread impact wasn't experienced to the same extent.
I know you can't go into the detail of what discussions last night, but it has been reported this morning that the offer is the final offer. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
And obviously we'll have to wait and see what happens today. But what confidence can you give to the people, the customers out there that have been affected? Can you be confident that this be resolved today?
Well, I think we would want to see this dispute resolved as quickly as possible. And on behalf of the company are making every effort to do that, and I'm satisfied that they are. I think everyone knows where public opinion is on this issue, and one hopes that we can make progress today and see real progress.
Can I suggest, Deputy Chair, that we stay away? Maybe we're getting very close to actually weakening the hand of the department, so if we can just stay away from that particular line, possibly, or delving in deeper than that.
That's okay, thanks.
Finish, okay. Cathal?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Minister. And notwithstanding the east-west divide, Danny, was there a divide within the west between urban and rural? Because that is a perception that's out there, that it's the more isolated rural areas that were being cut off, whereas the more urban areas, such as, say, Derry City, whatever, weren't affected. And was that the case, and was there a reason behind it? They're coming from the same plant now.
Not that.
In terms of Cahill.
I think maybe what so there was no is the answer to your question. When you're talking, I think we're going to talk about the city of Derry, which would be fed from a different water treatment works, which hadn't shut down, and the Cahill works, which did shut down. Part of the difficulty is that some of the network is fed directly from, I suppose, the pipe that exits, or the tank associated with the water treatment works, and therefore once production stopped, those were the first customers to start to feel the impact of that, whereas the other customers had water in storage and it took a little longer before they were impacted. But there was no action on our behalf that was either no decision process that said rural customers or urban customers are either more or less important. Absolutely not.
Okay. See, in terms of the notification, now Cahill shut down at 7:20 on Saturday morning. I was contacted by NI Water at quarter to 7 on Saturday night and put it out as much as I could, actually, and I went around social media and everywhere else. But there was a great degree of dissatisfaction in the way in which the word was spread. Is there any lessons to be learned there? And also, there seemed to be issues with the hotline and with the website in terms of what was on, what was off, even getting answers or whatever. I know that the phones never stopped at the weekend there, with people wondering when, whether would they go off or whatever?
I mean, we're always happy to take feedback, and certainly when we get all the customers back on supply and get them back to a stable running position, we will look back on this. In terms of making sure that people were kept informed, you can't give a specific. Water's different than, say, electricity, so you cannot specifically say on the 21st at 7 o'clock supply will end when a water treatment work shuts down. All that we know is, on average, this is the amount of water the customers consume. If they consume more, then they'll go out of supply quicker. If they consume less, then they'll have longer before they go out of supply. And there are a number of judgments then to be made in informing people. We did have within our major incident team a team of people who were solely dedicated to talking to consumer groups, critical care groups, the elected representatives. We issued throughout the incident a stakeholder report, and depending on the criticality of the timing, sometimes those reports were going out 3 times a day. When the situation was fairly stable, then that maybe would have dropped back to 1 or 2 reports a day. We convened multi-agency calls, so for all other agencies like the police, the fire, the other departments, the councils, and community charity assistance, I suppose, to keep them up to date on the developing situation. So certainly a lot of work in making sure that the communication and the message did get out. I noted yesterday some comments around the elected representatives hotline. Our call centre was evacuated for 15 minutes yesterday afternoon, and certainly any calls then that are not picked up in those 15 minutes are called back. So that's what happened yesterday. But we're happy to take learnings, Cathal.
Sure, just finally, I know on the stakeholders' statements, and they come out on a fairly regular basis, but once places were reconnected again, they fell off the stakeholders. Now, I know Dungiven was up, it fell off at somewhere on Monday evening. That meant that most people were actually reconnected. But there's a picture of a pint of water from there last night at 10 o'clock. Now, that's 24 hours later. That water is unusable. I think that is still the state this morning. So, like, while their customers are back on water, they're not really, because they still can't use it. And of course, the bowsers have been removed as well. So they were probably in worse condition than they were actually when the water was off.
Okay, well, obviously water quality is something that we would be concerned about, and one hopes now that the main supply has been restored, that the quality of that supply will continue to improve.
Yeah, it's something we can look into.
Yeah.
Do you see in terms of, are you finished, Cathal?
Yeah, thanks.
And yesterday in the House when you were asked about the private sector to alleviate the problems or the despair with them, many people without water, at what stage, Minister, would you consider actually bringing in private contractors? Because, I mean, we are at a stage now that it's run on for weeks, and if we are in a work rule situation, it's not a strike. At what stage are you prepared to push that button to actually assist within these rural regions to actually bring water back on?
Well, I think, I mean, given the day that's in it and the hour that's in it, I mean, I don't want to raise any temperature about this, but obviously we would have to look at the ongoing situation if this is not resolved today. I can say that
what does that mean? Look at the ongoing situation if it's not resolved.
Let the Minister finish.
Well, I think, Chairman, through you, what we need to do, and what we had done through the course of this dispute, was to make approaches to the private contractors. But I have to say, and Sarah will bear this out, there was a reluctance on behalf of private contractors to interfere, if you like, or to be seen to be interfering in industrial action. Now, whether or not that continues to be the case, would remain to be seen, and whether or not other private contractors would have the same views is a different issue. What I think we need to do and see what the outcomes are of today and see what actions are necessary, because, you know, it is intolerable that so many people have suffered for so long and for so much. And you know, we would, of necessity, have to look at other action.
You talk about raising temperatures, and I mean, I appreciate you're at a latter stage in terms of what is described this last couple of days, unfortunately, as intense negotiations. However, the temperatures on the ground have been pretty cold. I mean, we're at freezing point. We have bowsers. We're hearing the public reporting bowsers that are actually frozen, so they can't get water out of it. We have rural roads that are not gridded. So we have people, I listened to some on the radio yesterday morning, travelling 15 miles to get bottled water on roads that weren't gridded. So the situation is difficult for those. I appreciate the point you're making in terms of the difficulty with some contractors, Minister, but I think the time is long past. That, I mean, even if those contractors don't want to do it, there has to be a contractor out there who is willing, particularly in this economic climate, to take on work to actually help and assist NI Water to restore those supplies. And I mean, I think the union should set up too, because there was another commentator on this morning, whilst I didn't hear it, someone else was saying that they were very descriptive in terms of how the east-west split works in terms of some of the projects and how it's controlled better by the private sector. And I think the unions need to be very careful, because many of the workforce, whilst they're supporting the industrial action, are financially out a considerable amount of money. And I think they are at a stage that they're reluctant. And I think the membership themselves within the unions are beginning to realise that they are the ones that actually could lose here in the long run if yourself and NI Water decide actually to privatise more of this, and there'll be less overtime paid. So I mean, I think the message here is, Minister, and the west of the province has suffered, yes, but over and above the west, it is the rural locations. Whenever we have water bowsers, they might as well not have them, because they can't get water out of the minnow if they're frozen. Declan?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate what Sean said. There definitely is certainly a sense that the people in the west, they do feel cut off and second-class citizens in respect to this here. And I can also say as well, from a rural constituency, you know, the rural people feel that as well. They feel cut off. The roads issues, like, you know, I've been dealing with a situation where a dairy tanker couldn't get a farmer up on the Sparrans there, and he was forced to flush his milk into the slurry tank. You know, so people feel cut off and they feel isolated. You know, the bicycle strategy wasn't rural proofed. You know, so there's a feeling that from amongst rural people that I think DRD maybe take that on board as well. One of the things that I spoke to you about just the other day was about the emergency protocols that were in place at Christmas time. Now, certainly in my part of the world, it was a very desperate situation there at the weekend, where we had people who were vulnerable people who were trapped in their homes and they couldn't get out, and indeed we had to get the Red Cross in to assist local communities to distribute some water. How determined are you to push ahead with setting in place emergency protocols should they be required the time ahead? Because I think that there is actually a risk to public safety, particularly in isolated rural areas for vulnerable customers.
Well, thank you, Declan. And you will know that the protocol that was entered into over the Christmas and New Year period was done so with the cooperation of the trade unions and the workers. And you know, to a certain extent, that would continue to be necessary if that protocol had to be reactivated or in any way enhanced. But certainly, that protocol for the period that it lasted did give us some relief. But what I think I'm more interested in is the wider and the more fundamental solution, so that we don't get into emergency situations like this again.
So, obviously, notwithstanding, and we all hope for that their solution, but you know, I certainly, the situation of the weekend was greatly compounded by the adverse weather conditions, and you know, I think it's really important that the negotiations with unions or whatever that those are put in place. I note that you mentioned earlier, Minister, that you've asked the utility regulator to review the NIW response. Are there other aspects of the response that you think could be better? Okay. Or what was the purpose of asking the utility regulator
to review? You would expect me, and I would what this committee would expect me to review the performance of the company and as Minister. I don't think there's anything wrong in asking the appropriate person, in this case the utility operator, to carry out that exercise as to how, and if there are lessons to be learned, then those lessons will be taken on board and learned. So, I don't see it as as something that anybody could or should be afraid of.
Yep.
Minister, and I think that's a good point, and I think it's a point well made on your behalf. But so you're bringing in a regulator to look at if there's lessons learned from NI Water. Are you going to bring anyone independent in to look at your organisation to see if there's any lessons to be learned from DRD themselves and their actually handling of the situation? Because you are quick to claim credit where credit should be claimed, but whenever there's criticisms, you quickly distance yourselves from those. So are you going to actually ask someone to independently review DRD's handling of the situation?
Chairman, you will know that in politics, success has many fathers. Failure is inclined to be an orphan. I'm not claiming either success or orphanage.
No, you should claim success at this stage.
No, I'm not. And I'm not in any way suggesting that, that everybody, that anyone involved in this wouldn't have lessons to learn or whatever. So I'm open to that. But I do believe that my record and that of the department in its approach to this dispute does stand up to scrutiny. And this is a committee who scrutinises the work of the department and scrutinises my work as well. I hear what you're saying, but I believe within myself, and I believe that the actions of my department can be fully justified and can be supported.
I mean, you're very good at the sayings, and I'm not so good at them, but there's another one about something about ask my brother, am I a liar? So it's easy for you to go to NI Water and ask them, or sorry, the regulator to ask them to review. You're the head of DRD, so why, given that you think there could be possibly lessons learned from NI Water, why would you not accept the same criticisms of your own department and let someone come in and do a review? Because, I mean, it strikes me odd, I have to say, that Peter said 9th of January was the last formal emergency meeting we had, given on the 9th of January, actually, we weren't at the situation we are now in Northern Ireland with the number of homes. After the 9th of January, actually, things got much worse. Well, your department hasn't seen fit to actually call an emergency meeting after that. So I actually think, Minister, sorry, if you let me finish my point, Peter. I think, Minister, if you're quick to call in the regulator to look at NI Water, I also think you should bring them in and look at your own department.
Well, I hear what you say. You're entitled to your view. The Minister's role is, at the end of the day, the buck stops here. And I'm absolutely clear on that. And I have responsibilities that others can be armchair generals, if they like, but and can offer plenty of advice and not much support from the side. And that's up to them. But ultimately, faced with the situation that we had, I believe I have acted in a responsible way, and also in a way that wants to see this dispute resolved for the good of everybody. And I don't think that the criticism that I've heard, the criticisms that you and others have offered, are either fair or warranted, but you make them, you're entitled to make them. I'm concentrating on getting this thing fixed and getting it resolved. And, the hurly-burly of politics is what it is.
Okay, we'll still stay in the west of the band then. John?
Chairman, thanks. You did say, Minister, that success has many fathers, and the orphan's very much in his own. Without wishing to cause any offence, you have appeared over the last week as very much on your own, almost like the rabbit in the headlights. What sort of support are you getting from your colleagues in the executive?
Well, obviously, DRD in relation to NI Water are the lead department, but there are cross-cutting issues, not least the issues of executive pay and pensions policies. and so I have briefed the executive at its meeting last Thursday. As I said in House yesterday, I had when this dispute began to emerge more seriously in December, I sought the opportunity to meet with the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. Those meetings didn't happen. But you know, there has been contact at official level with particularly DFP, because DFP do have a role to play and may yet have a role to play in this. So I'm getting on with the work that I'm charged to do. I suppose greater assistance might be welcome from executive colleagues, but I'm determined that we pursue the earliest resolution of this dispute at the earliest available time. And you know, Daniel in the Lion's Den is a story that will be familiar to many.
Chairperson, let's leave that alone for a moment. There were 19 people asked questions in the Assembly yesterday. We've heard all the discussions on television and radio. We're having this meeting this morning. And I keep thinking about the lady up in Gibberstown who was collecting the snow off the roof of a car to boil water, or the poor farmer struggling with 2 buckets of water across a farmyard to try and keep animals alive. And I haven't heard anything this morning that will resonate with those people. Now, I'm conscious that there's discussions. I hope, Minister, that this dispute is not settled quickly or at the earliest, but it's settled today. And maybe just to go back to an interesting point that was raised earlier, I'm long enough in this Assembly to remember the dark days when NIEW was at its lowest, during the days of Lawrence Mackenzie. Now, since that, the image of NIEW has improved dramatically. But if you were to assess it in the eyes of the public, particularly those in the West today, it's rock bottom. Now, I haven't heard a single word from the chairman of NIEW, Sean Hogan. Is he hiding onto the table? I mean, he's had time to put things on his website about his skills and his expertise and all that. What role has he played in this? And indeed, the other directors who get well paid for working 1-2 days a week, where are they?
Can I maybe I should take that. And I think, John, you make a very good point. As I sit here and I'd answered questions down this side, I should have said at the very outset a sincere apology to all those customers in Northern Ireland who have experienced supply interruptions. It is so far from what we in NI Water aspire to, and I recognise a great performance from within the NI Water team in turning the company round, and our record in providing clean safe drinking water till now has been very, very good, and we'll get back to that place very, very quickly. In terms of the chairman and I will have been in daily contact, as with the other non-executive members.
Was he in a Labour Relations Agency all night playing his role?
The Labour Relations Agency, you may all have much more experience of it than I. I did spend the night there. Well, I left in the early hours of the morning. How that works is your 2 separate rooms, and you need to have the people who can negotiate and who are negotiating, who have the knowledge and the expertise of the offers and the asks. And those were the people who were in the room, those with the knowledge and the expertise of the asks. The non-executive directors, some of them were in the call centre. We had our call centre manned up extensively over the period, should it be needed. And one of our non-executive directors was in the call centre. They were in contact with us, offering support. As we sought, there were questions asked around, could you find additional resource? What did you do to look for additional resource? We looked right across the GB. One of our non-executive directors is based in Scotland, and he was very helpful in providing contacts and leads for us. So right across the management and senior management team within NI Water, they were all very actively engaged in managing this.
Chairperson, I don't really want to ask any more questions, because really what is critical this morning is that we get news that this dispute is settled. Not early, not sometime in the immediate future, but today. And my impassioned appeal to everybody is, for God's sake, rise above party politics and allow this thing to end, because I have no doubt it can end if everybody would forget about the election that's coming up, stop scoring political points and allow the thing to happen.
Sarah, can I just take you back to the point you just made in response to John? It struck me, and I'm surprised he didn't ask about it, but a non-executive director for NI Water based in Scotland?
Yes.
Crazy.
How does that work? I mean,
He lives in Scotland.
so how would he have any role to play within an organisation based in Northern Ireland?
Well, a non-executive director is there to provide strategic direction. They attend board meetings. They come to our board meeting, and that particular individual has significant experience in the water industry and provides very expert and useful advice to the board. They're a very valuable member of the board.
And what has that member been doing in terms of this dispute?
It's been extremely helpful in providing sources and where we can get additional labour. Extremely helpful.
Additional labour, is this additional labour that you can't use?
So,
This is additional labour that the Minister said earlier that you've tried to get, but people are reluctant to come in.
Yes, we have been asked our primary function is to make sure that there are drinking water supplies, and as we experienced problems in our water treatment works, we sought to find ways to make sure that we could resolve those problems. We have looked far and wide to make sure that we leave no stone unturned.
So the non-executive director based in Scotland has told you where to get individual workforce. So can you tell us then today, have you secured more people to come in and do work?
The leads that he provided for us, we have followed through and we continue to progress them.
And have they been successful?
We haven't deployed them into Northern Ireland, no.
Sorry, you haven't?
No.
So they haven't been that useful then?
Briefly, can I just back to the Minister?
I think it is worth saying that people are appointed through the public appointments process, and I think the experience that people bring and the skills that they can offer. The Northern Ireland Water Board is not unique in attracting that type of experience and that type of benefit to the operation of a water company.
I'm not taking away from that. I mean, it's just in terms of Sarah's response. She said that he gave her very valuable leads. However, those leads sound as if they were futile because you didn't get anybody to work for you for that. John?
Just to go out very, very briefly. Minister, will you give this committee an undertaking this morning that you will look at a public appointment, because you have inherited quite a few of them in different organisations, and I'll spare the other ones their blushes this morning. Will you please, as I think you've indicated you would do, look at how these people are appointed, what skills they are, indeed perhaps even where they live, so that in fact we have something better than we have at the moment.
Well, I note your comment. I think we might be in trouble if we were to heed your advice as to where people live.
Well, I stopped short there.
Because there were criticisms of geography earlier. Look, the public appointments process is one that I take an active interest in, and I will continue to do, not just in respect of NI Water, but the other public appointments that are available to me.
Okay, finished now?
Yeah. Thanks.
Ross, you're next.
Good morning, Minister.
Morning.
You have taken quite a lot of personal criticism. You've been accused of burying your head in the sand. You've been accused of going and hiding. How do you react to that criticism?
I don't. Look, we talked earlier about the hurly-burly of politics, and politics can be a rough trade, and sometimes politicians do what politicians do best, and that is blame each other or blame somebody else. And I'm not sure that impresses the wider electorate. My focus in all of this has been to resolve this dispute and to address the clear dreadful situation that many people across this province find themselves in, particularly in the west, particularly in areas of counties Tyrone and Fermanagh. And that's where my focus is. Others want to take pot shots. People entering public life understand the consequences of that. So, you give it, sometimes you have to take it.
I forgot it at the start. I want to pay tribute to the Red Cross,
Yes.
the churches and those individuals who have gone out of their way to help the people in West Tyrone and further afield. And we all have seen images of our constituents with saucepans having to melt snow. The staff involved here...
I would want to join you in a tribute to all of those who have sought to help, particularly to bring relief to families and homes and households and businesses and farms and, the full range of services. And included in that are those that you've named.
The staff involved in this dispute are the same staff who a few years ago in extreme weather conditions worked night and day to bring water services back to the west. These are the same people who were lauded high by everybody in this assembly and in council chambers throughout Northern Ireland. So there's no doubt they have a skill set there, and there's no doubt they have a very strong work ethic. The protocol that was put into place before Christmas, how was that negotiated?
Well, that was negotiated with the cooperation of the trade unions, and to that extent, it was very welcome. And I hope that we're not in a situation where we will have to look to get that put in place today, because I want to see the issue resolved fully and finally. But you're right. These workers, this is a classic management union dispute. People feel strongly on an issue. They're in a democratic society, in trade unions, entitled to make representations, and that is the nature of it. And we're trying to work through those issues, and we'll continue to do until we resolve them. But we cannot ignore, absolutely cannot ignore, where public opinion is on this, and what the general feeling within the community is to get this sorted and get people back and restored to a proper and full water supply.
My final comment is in relation to the extreme weather that we have experienced in the west. And obviously counties Londonderry, Tyrone and Fermanagh have taken the brunt of it. In fact, if I leave Omagh and basically hit Ballygolly, the whole eastern side is clear, whereas we in the west have had really severe weather. Without the industrial dispute we might face, would we have had similar problems in relation to the water supply in the west due to the adverse weather that we're now facing?
No, I don't believe we would, because we were not in a situation of prolonged weather which impacted in the way that freeze-thaw did, and particularly over the Christmas holidays at that time. And all of those factors were at play at that point. No, the disruption to water supply is solely down, in my view, to the industrial dispute. So it's important that we resolve that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. Alex, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. First question to you, Sarah, if that's okay.
Yes.
If there's any businesses that have been affected by this, will they be getting a reduced bill for that to make up for the loss of water for the business?
Only in so much as the water that they didn't consume. There is no guarantee to uninterrupted water supply as a business customer, so no.
Okay. Danny, yesterday you avoided a question regarding the redeployment of staff towards the most severely affected areas. Will that happen if the dispute does go on and things get worse? Will staff be able to be redeployed if necessary?
Yeah, I mean, Sorry, Alan.
Having set up what we call a silver command team, that they're tasked with assessing the situation on the network and then assigning resource in full to wherever it's needed to resolve any issues. So that's how that will be handled.
Okay, and things get worse and things don't get resolved and it gets really bad. are you looking at bringing in the private sector to help if needs be?
So from the outset, from before this action commenced, we looked to all those who partner with us and have some of the skill and expertise that we might need, and we made requests through mutual aid, both in GB and in Northern Ireland, and through partner contractors. Through this period to date, all have responded to say this is an industrial dispute and therefore normal aid protocols do not apply, and they are reluctant to engage with us. We are now actively looking to other arrangements to try and source the expertise that we might need, and we won't stop in that regard.
Okay, just finally, how long, I know the industrial election's been happening since the 22nd of December, how long has there been talks and discussions been going on about the dispute? How long?
So the dispute centres around the introduction of a pension, or of pension reform, and discussions around pension reform have been ongoing well over a year, probably 18 months, from an initial we need to reform our pension scheme, and making the unions aware of that. In July 14, we then formally consulted on the revised pension scheme. There was an open period of consultation from July to September, and then from September right through to December, we were meeting with unions on at least a monthly basis, but often fortnightly and weekly, to work through concerns. The key concern that would have been raised would be affordability, and we look to see within the parameters of executive pension policy where we could address that, and that was the work that we had done. So there has been dialogue between the trade unions and management on a very regular basis for a sustained period of time.
Yeah, and I accept that. That's a fair point. But how did we get to the point of where we are today when this has been discussed for well over a year? You know, surely with such a large period of time, we could have got this resolved, I would have thought. Well, you would like to think a lot sooner. How can we get to such a stage with such a long period of discussions where we are today? You know, it's
probably a key question, and it is one when we get out the other side with your 2020 glasses on, you might say, there's the point, there's the point. From our perspective, dialogue was ongoing. A number of the things that have been discussed in the later weeks were never discussed earlier, so things that became very important. I think fundamentally it boils down to pension reform. Pension reform has been implemented right across the public sector, and there were a group of people who didn't want to accept that pension reform, and that's the fundamental. And it is executive policy, and the difficult thing was for us to find a way to communicate that and to take our workforce with us.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
One of the dangers with all of this, and the Minister's quite right in terms of public opinion and how public opinion has been swayed with this whole situation. But the other thing the public are starting to ask is, in this whole work to rule, why there's such a reliance on overtime. Is this something you're going to look at or not look at, and are we going to continue going forward with a total reliance on overtime with such a large organisation? And dependent on, your critics are already, because you've took a drink of water, some of them, it's been tweeted already, I think some of the media have picked you up drinking water, so something that we all rely on in terms of our water. Are you going to continue to rely on overtime as a way forward for the organisation, or is this going to be used? We've all seen the impact of this. The unions have been, I say they've been misjudged, and I think it's been miscalculated in their timing of this, but they've used it for their own advantage, where they're causing maximum disruption. But I think they're also disadvantaged in their own workforce in terms of what they lose. But the public are asking, and I don't know if other members are getting that as well. They cannot understand why there's such a reliance on overtime to operate an organisation such as NI Water for something that we all take for granted, such as water.
I think I would maybe take you back to say NI Water is a utility. It's a public health utility, and it operates on a 24/7 basis. Since over the past number of years, since we have been reclassified as a non-departmental public body, we have been subject to public sector pay remit policies. So the pay remit policies for the civil service, which are not a 24/7 utility, have been applied to NI Water. And that has introduced friction in the industrial relations environment. The use of or how utilities cover out of hour work, standard across the utility business to cover emergencies out of hour. It is done using on-call and standby rotas. That's standard practice. It's standard practice here in Northern Ireland, and it's standard practice in Great Britain. So the reason that we find ourselves exposed at the minute is we're subject to industrial action. Had staff in any other utility in GB taken industrial action where they withdrew their services from on-call and standby, this would be the outworkings of it. So the use of an on-call rota and a standby rota to ensure that there is 24/7 response is standard operating practice for utilities.
Not disputing that. I mean, what I'm saying is it obviously shows as well, but the effect that it can have when it doesn't work. So have you looked at, I mean, is there any cost analysis done and actually what it's costing in terms of the overtime payment? And is there any consideration given going forward that you may break away from that and look at a shift system?
Well, shifts are, in actual fact, these are all things that we will have looked at in the past, and to run a shift system is far more expensive, and we actually don't have the amount of work that would justify having somebody working on a full shift. But certainly, when we come through this and we get customers' supplies restored, we will look to our operation and we will want to maximise it to provide customer service, uninterrupted customer service. That will be our focus.
The only reason I ask the question is the public are asking the same questions, why there's such a reliance on overtime. Joe, you're next.
Yes, Chairman. Well, first of all, I welcome the Minister and his officials and the Chief Executive of NIW. I appreciate the Minister came to the House yesterday and made a statement, but I still feel there's a fair bit of bluff, smoke and fog around. The reality is, why did nobody recognise that this was a crisis that affected thousands of people until right late in the day? And secondly, on the industrial relations and negotiations, why was there a token meeting for a long time until yesterday before there was concentrated meetings? And the question is, did you just leave there last night with the clear understanding that everything had been done to come to a final conclusion? Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Joe. I think the fact that the issue of concentrating mines, I've been trying to concentrate mines, and indeed the company have been involved in direct and detailed negotiations for quite a long period through this dispute. So it's not that there's been a casual attitude. It's not that it's been, oh well, it doesn't matter. It does matter, and it has mattered through. And before Christmas, we were able, because it mattered so much, able to put in place that protocol that did tide us over and give us more time. But ultimately, as in all negotiations, and we're politicians around this room as well, and we understand negotiations, and we understand that when they come to a climax, and I very much hope that the negotiations last night would come to a successful climax. So that's where we are. But there has been no attitude of, well, it doesn't matter, and who cares? So what? I'm not a so what minister. So we need to continue to ensure that this dispute is resolved as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I further ask, why did the hotline information service fail so badly? Those people that were trying to get answers and have been given conflicting information and conflicting advice, which added to the confusion.
Might be
That's for
helpful if
Sean,
Sean,
yeah.
if Sean addressed that.
Well, just to give you
Sean might feel useful now after sitting for nearly an hour not getting speaking. So.
just to give you a feel for the number of calls we've taken in total, we took nearly 15,000 operational calls from before Christmas until yesterday, and we answered with hot voice in terms of over 99% of those calls. There was a couple of interruptions in terms of fire evacuations from the building, and where that happened, we endeavoured to call back those. Where the call was traceable, we endeavoured to call those back. So it was a couple of interruptions for short periods of time.
Would Sean accept, however, that conflicting information and different stories were told to different people at different times?
We could more than happy, Joe, if there are some specifics.
Well, some people are on the public record of having said that.
Yeah.
The farmer from Cash, for example, has said that repeatedly.
Now, you will find different responses, and that goes back to the vagaries of a water network. So, in the first instance, if you're without water and the water treatment work comes back on, we would be telling you your water supply should be on within X hours. If there's an airlock, then that doesn't come to fruition. So the next time you phone in, you'll be told there's an airlock and your water supply should be restored at our best estimate. And in some instances, for the people in Draperstown, those airlocks took 4 to 5 days to resolve. So that is a reason why people might get different answers when they call the call centre. What we do is we make sure that our call handlers are equipped with the best information that we have at the time, and we make sure that that information that the call handlers have is the same information that's on our website. So our website was up, it was running, customers were able to go into it, put in their postcode to get an update specific to their area. They were able to go into the website and find out specific to their area where alternative sources of water were located, and those all worked throughout and are continuing to work as this incident has been ongoing.
And lastly, Chairman, in relation to, obviously, Danny, you're the Minister, and the only place where the public at large could bring this issue to the accountable authorities was through the Assembly. Did Mr Robinson or Mr McGuinness contact you since yesterday and offer advice or help or a meeting?
Nothing since yesterday or nothing overnight. I'd spoken to the Deputy First Minister, mostly in a constituency point of view on Saturday night. But, you know, there hasn't been a lot of contact.
And lastly, is the Minister for Finance the gatekeeper or not? And is he somewhat to blame in this regard?
Well, look, the DFP have and will have a role in this, and let's see what the rest of this day, what the coming hours bring. But I hope that everybody can work positively and proactively to put this resolution to a successful conclusion as quickly as possible.
And has his advice or help been sought over the last 24 hours?
There has been contact. I'm aware that there's been consistent contact with DFP officials at official level over quite a prolonged period now. I haven't spoken directly to the Finance Minister.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming to us this morning. Hopefully there will be a resolution of this dire situation today, but if there's not, what can be done this weekend for those consumers who are impacted that wasn't done last weekend? Now, Minister, you alluded to the fact that some private companies weren't willing to become involved and to lend assistance, but if I picked you up right, I thought you said there was others that maybe hadn't been explored, but then Sarah indicated that there were no private companies willing to come in and help here. Is that the case? If that is the case, Sarah, you alluded to another resource that may be tapped into. Can I ask you to expand on that so that people won't have the same levels of hardship this weekend?
If the thank you for the question. If the industrial action continues, I cannot guarantee that there will be no impact this weekend. I think what I have tried to explain is that every avenue that is open to us is currently being explored. So yes, from a very early stage, we look to normally in circumstances like this, where it something as a result of nature, you would get mutual aid from the water companies, you would get mutual aid here in Northern Ireland, you would turn to other contracting partners. And as we did that, people were clear with us this is an industrial dispute, and therefore our organisation is very reluctant to become involved in your industrial dispute, and that resource wasn't available to us. So we continue, as a responsible management team, we continue to seek to find a resolution to this, but I can't give guarantees today.
So are you saying that there are no private companies out there who will lend help?
I'm not saying so. I can't give guarantees. I'm saying that I continue to explore that to find a resource.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
So, Sarah, in terms of your total workforce for NIW,
yes,
that would be actively working on the supply of water, how many have you employed in that sector? And how many are actually involved in industrial action?
We have 1,260 staff, and just over 700 are trade union members.
So, and again, this is something you actually hear the public asking, I suppose. I mean, and I assume that they're normal day jobs as well, but so you have approximately, about almost 600 people not involved in industrial action. Are they on the work to rule as well, or will they come in and cover the overtime?
So a number of staff, and that is how we've been able to manage an incident management regime on a 24/7 basis. So we have had access to members of staff have worked throughout this dispute and have worked round the clock. So we maximise those people who are willing to come in and work. And a number of people have put every single day since Christmas, 24/7, have been in working.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's worth saying that they have to be willing. They cannot be forced.
Absolutely, and I mean, and they have to be applauded for what they're doing as well, because obviously there's a greater reliance on them. But given there's more pressure, it seems to be at the moment, there's a perception of pressures in the West. Of the 600 odd workforce, there's just under 600 who are not in industrial action, would they be concentrating those on the West in the evening shifts, or are they staying in the East?
So our incident management team are set up in Belfast, so that they get telemetry signals from all our assets, and then they direct resource as and where a problem has occurred. Mm-hmm. So we're not, it's like we have a central pool of resource and we send it to wherever it's needed.
Okay, thank you. Dan, you want a supplement there?
Chair, that was the point I was trying to get to yesterday, and my question. If just take Saturday, it was the Loughnacurry treatment works seemed to be the problem, but you did have access to 600 staff, and the point I'm trying to make is, why could some of those not have been reallocated to try and address that issue?
We had a team of managers in that water treatment works, and they were there, Sean, 14 hours trying to deal with what had gone wrong there and get the works up and running. There was a significant number of things that went wrong in that works. There was a power outage, and there were a number of other failures within the works, and they were not able to bring the works back up. So we did have people in. I think the other thing to remember is this is skilled work, and you have to have the right skill set. So not to detract necessarily from an accountant, but if you're an accountant and I send you into a water treatment works, you're not going to be able to, A, I wouldn't do it from a health and safety perspective, and B, you're not going to be able to get that works back up and running.
Probably wouldn't send in a politician either.
Well, Chair, sorry, I was remiss of me earlier. I should have also, to want to put on record, the great assistance from the Red Cross, who brought their 4x4s into the Tyrone area on Sunday, and I have to say, without them, a lot of vulnerable people have been a lot worse off.
Okay. Chris, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for being here today, Minister, officials and NI Water staff. Can I ask for a very brief summary of the initial proposed changes to the NI Water pension scheme and how that compares to other public sector pension reform?
Probably me. So as we sought to reform our pension scheme, we did so in such a way as it would be broadly comparable with the public sector pension scheme. So that was seen a move from a final salary scheme to a career average scheme, an increase in contributions, and a linking of the normal retirement age to state pension age. So those were all areas which were broadly comparable with the public sector pension scheme, and a number of checkpoints were carried out in conjunction with the government GAD, the Government Actuaries Department, and then latterly with DFP to ensure that our proposals were broadly comparable to that of the civil service.
Okay, Minister, will you be in any way reviewing the governance arrangements for NI Water, given this scenario whereby 50% of distribution and maintenance is provided by a public-private partnership and the rest is not?
Well, Chris, can I say that I think all of us around this room are aware of the issues of the governance and the finance arrangements that NI Water has to operate in, and you know, it is less than satisfactory from their point of view, and so what I have done in respect of that, I have put various options to executive colleagues and the executive review group, and you know, ultimately these will be decisions for the entire executive to move forward on. There hasn't been a lot of progress on the various options. I know we're even around this room. If we were to take the sample of opinion, there would be varying options that would be favoured, and some might be ruled out completely. So, you know, that doesn't help NI Water in its operation, and it doesn't help with the governance and the finance issues, and of course those issues remain of concern to me.
Okay, it's hard to conclude that the governance arrangements are doing anything than exposing customers to significant risk of serious disruption if and when industrial action of this nature occurs.
Well, you know, you can take that view. You can also take the view that trade unions are a feature of democratic society. They're entitled to organise, to represent their members and the workforce, and generally they make a very positive contribution to working life here, as they have indeed worked very hard. The entire staff and workforce has made significant strides in more recent years after the debacle of Freeze Thaw, and the reputational damage that was caused as a result of that had largely been repaired. And I regret very much that, you know, that this issue will perhaps impact on that, and that's why we need to get it sorted as quickly as possible.
Okay. And Sarah, you've responded to this to a certain extent already, but could you again respond to the assertions that have been made that the shift patterns are unfit for purpose, and stand over the need for the, I think it's a region of £2 million overtime bill that was incurred last year?
Yes, I would say that it is normal practice to cover out of hours events by the use of standby and on-call rotas. It is routinely used right across the utility sector and other sectors. I think that there has been some press articles this morning that perhaps are quoting figures that are maybe not reflective of the true extent of NI Water's salary bill, and that might be impacting or reflecting, judging your question. But on-call rotas are certainly a proper way to cover out-of-hours events.
Okay, last question, Chair. The Minister, you touched on finance as well there. Yesterday you mentioned that underinvestment over the years had led to weak infrastructure in certain places. Has underinvestment been part of the problem, and how exactly are you going to propose that the Executive address that?
Well, I've argued very strongly around the executive table, and indeed I've welcomed the comments of members of this committee in terms of supporting further investment in NI Water and in our water infrastructure. I think it is very, very necessary. It is very necessary as we go forward under PC 15 and what the utility regulator has made clear where we need to be in all of that. Unfortunately, decisions have been taken. The budget now agreed does leave a significant shortfall next year in those plans. I regret that very much, and I hope that somehow we can address that with political consensus.
Chair, can I just make one proposal in closing? The Red Cross has called for OFM, DFM to enact civil contingency legislation that would formalise regional and local government rules in emergency planning. I have raised the issue at OFM, DFM committee, but it might be worthwhile this committee receiving a briefing on the extent of civil contingency planning in the executive, and maybe to hear from the Red Cross as to how they think that could possibly be improved.
Well, I suppose, and I'm happy enough that we write to find out the answer for that. But if if Red Cross want to make a presentation, it's probably best placed to OFM, DFM themselves as opposed to us. So,
I just think it is an executive responsibility. The Minister for Regional Development is obviously consistently in a lead role and at the head of having to take responsibility for many of these issues, but there are wider arrangements in place that perhaps should be looked at as well, in my opinion, that the DRD committee could perhaps look at. I'll leave that with you, Chair.
Sure.
That's what we can.
Chair, would you mind if I just reinforce what Chris said around funding? I think that what you see here in recent days just underpins the essential public service that NI Water provides. We've been through a process with our regulator that has set out the funding levels required in order that we are an efficient organisation, not an organisation with slack in it, an efficient organisation. And I would just appeal for your support in the coming weeks and months that says, do we value our water and sewerage services and can we fund them?
Well, I think you make an interesting point, and following on from the point Chris made. And I know, Minister, you would have your own trolls to find out where I say things. I noticed you had a statement out yesterday to attack me, so maybe I just correct you. You were given a budget allocation in terms of draft budget you didn't vote against. You abstained, so you were probably in support of that budget. You took that budget and actually you robbed more money.
The draft budget, I think.
Well, I think it was the draft one, yes. And you robbed more money from NI Water. So the budget was within your control. The allocation you were given, it was your decision to take more from NI Water. Then you go back with the begging bowl. Actually, I think you're a bit like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some more? You've been bailed out time after time. So I think it's time that you stepped up to the mark as well.
Well, Chairman, a draft budget is a draft budget. When that budget then emerged as what was termed an agreed budget, you will know that I voted against it, and you will know my record on it. But you know that's I do say I would have hoped and expected that this committee would be unanimous in its support for the proper funding of NI Water in the present situation, and as we move forward, given PC15 and what the regulator says and all of those issues. That's not the case, unfortunately. I regret that.
David, sorry, Joe, you wanted something?
No, let David go first.
Well, David might have a few, I'd imagine. So if you want something,
yeah, supplementary. Sarah, Loch Bradley.
Yes.
Loch McCrory.
Yes.
Do they need capital investment or not? There were recent capital investments in both, or was it routine changes of filters and chemical additives that had to be changed as part of routine maintenance or not?
These water treatment works going into the next PC15 period will have had amounts of money for maintenance activities assigned to them, and I think it just plays to they're built into our business plan for the next 6 years. Our business plan for the next 6 years appears not to be funded, and therefore we will have to go through a process of prioritisation to see, with the money that is available, what it should be spent.
Well, let's answer the question straight. Does it need capital investment or not, those two water providers? Or is it routine?
It's just routine. There's routine maintenance planned for those works. Just routine maintenance.
So before we settle the dispute, you could redeploy some staff yesterday to give some attention to that, Bradley.
During the normal working day, staff are available to work. So from 8 to 4, we have staff fully
But
deployed.
the crisis
in our
wasn't
works.
sufficiently severe enough to do that last week.
Every day last week, during normal working hours, we have staff deployed to the works. It's only out of hours that the unavailability becomes an issue.
Joe, if you want to come back to that, but let David in. I mean, that was a very long supplementary, so David, you're
Chairman, I don't believe in much political foreplay. Let's get into the issues that matter.
Yeah, but I mean, I think if you wait your time, because David was down before you, so David.
I was very glad to give way to Joe. It was a very pertinent question.
He's an awfully nice person.
If it's okay with you, Chairman, I'd like to take on Mr May, Northern Ireland Water and the Minister in that sequence of order. To say from the outset, there is no party politics involved in this.
Shouldn't be.
There isn't. This committee is a scrutiny body and people in politics come first, and that's the way this committee has always acted, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. Mr May, could you tell me when did officials realise or first know that the union would come knocking on the door over pensions?
There have been ongoing discussions with Northern Ireland Water
No,
right through the
when did you
introduction.
first realise that the union, I'm asking you, in your department, when did you first realise, when did it become obvious that the union was going to be knocking on your door?
Well, just let me explain that throughout the introduction of the pension scheme, there have been ongoing discussions between the Department and Northern Ireland Water. As a result of the consultation, it was clear that there was a view within Northern Ireland Water among staff that there was a concern, and then Northern Ireland Water balloted their staff, and throughout that period there were regular ongoing contacts between the Department and NIW, so we were aware throughout the time as to where we were on the pension negotiations.
In answer to a previous question, Sarah Venning said that it was 18 months ago that she first knew about it, first thought about it. Does that coincide with your department, that you knew about it 18 months ago?
I think the issue about pension reform was first raised in March 2012, actually, about the need to address pension reform because the reforms were being brought in across the public sector, and the Northern Ireland Water Scheme is a by-analogy scheme. It's a scheme that's designed to remain as close as possible to the civil service scheme. So as the changes were brought in for the civil service, so the department was raising with Northern Ireland Water questions about how that would be introduced.
Okay, well, on the matter of questions about how that would be introduced, when was the stance on pensions, the stance not to give way to the unions, adopted between the department and the company?
Well, the department has been clear throughout that any resolution has to be within the terms of the executive's wider pensions policy, and we haven't diverted from that throughout the discussions.
So the department and the company were both very clear that there would be no concessions.
There were discussions about whether there was any scope for flexibility, and we had to clarify that there was no scope for flexibility.
Okay. When did, maybe this is an if, but when did the department actually talk to the unions?
Well, the minister's rehearsed that he met the unions prior to Christmas, and he's met them twice since. I went to a meeting on the 23rd of December with Sarah and other Northern Ireland Water colleagues in respect of the protocol, and so there have been a series of contacts with the unions through the process.
Is it fair to say then, Mr May, that up to last month the department hadn't, either via the minister or you or your officials, up to last month and late last month, that the department hadn't spoken to the unions?
I think it was not late last month. I think it was, I can't remember the precise date, but it was in early mid-December that the minister met the unions. I don't recall that having. I only joined the department in mid-November, so my recollection before that is not perfect, I'm afraid. But normally you would expect management and unions to meet together to address industrial relations issues. You wouldn't expect the department to get involved.
Okay. Could I ask, have you or your senior directors visited the areas and the people affected by no water?
No.
Okay. I wonder, Chairman, if we could just turn now to Northern Ireland Water. hopefully, when the word is good to go back to work, how long will it take for the supplies to be treated as normal?
Well, this morning, there were 1,200 customers without water supplies. We are at normal water production today. And we have staff as normal deployed on the ground today to deal with airlocks.
Okay, my question was, normal was before this incident, okay? I understand 1,200 workers. I understand also, and the people will understand who were dramatically affected, that the figures have fluctuated from 3,000 to 4,000 to 6,000 to 9,000. I'm really talking about going back to normal life.
Within hours.
Within hours.
If the unions call off their action, then within hours.
So within hours. Okay. Regarding technical, mechanical or structural elements, I know it's hard to gauge, but it just would be helpful. Are there any new or suspected complications likely to arise in other plants?
I don't think I can answer that question on the basis that I really can't tell the future.
I think we're afraid of the crystal ball for that one, David. So.
Well, I think if it was an engineer sitting there...
I am an engineer.
Well, I would have thought you might have been able to answer it, because somebody should be able to give you that information.
I think that'll be unreasonable.
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable at all. We're here to find out. You said that in previous answers, and you give an indication, which prompts me to ask the question, have you been trying to bring in contractors from outside Northern Ireland?
We have used those contracts that are open to us, existing contracts, to supplement our resource during this action.
My question is, have you been trying to bring in outside contractors from outside Northern Ireland?
We've looked to GB to see if the resource that we require is available to us.
And is it?
It's a work stream that's actively ongoing at the minute.
Pardon?
It's something we're actively progressing at the minute.
So, if you could be back in business within hours, as you've said, why would you be ongoing with the potential of bringing in outside contractors?
So that if the dispute is not resolved, we are no further behind. We have to put customers first.
So if the dispute isn't resolved, you're going to move immediately, quickly, to use outside contractors from Northern Ireland or anywhere else to, within hours, put the supply back to normal. Is that what you're saying?
I think we've probably got mixed up. I am seeking to look further afield to see if resources available to us. That is not something that can be deployed within hours. Logistically, if nothing else, they can't be here within hours.
Well, how long would it take to get them here?
I can't tell you at this point in time because I haven't secured the resource.
But have you not asked in your discussions in the potential, bearing that there'll be costs and logistics, etc., if it was a situation that we would require you and you could do it and we could seal a temporary contract, how long would it take you to be here?
Indeed, those are the discussions that are ongoing.
And have you not had an answer yet?
Those are the discussions that are ongoing.
Sorry, I asked you, have you not had an answer yet?
I haven't.
You're not prepared to tell me whether you've had an answer?
I haven't.
But I think,
discussions are ongoing.
Well, I think
it's a work stream that is actively being progressed.
David, without, I know you're asking a particular line of question, and I think, Sarah, it's not unreasonable to ask if you've been in negotiations with outside contractors in another region, if they were prepared to do it, how soon they could take up that. I mean, I think that's a fair question.
No, and fair enough. I'm not at that stage, so I haven't found the resource.
Right, so you haven't found resource.
Got to the point where I'm saying, how quickly can you be here? So in terms of tankers and tankers of water, we got to that point, and we know how much it would cost us, how long it would take them to come across in the ferry. But actually, that's alternative water, and we're trying, if this went on, we would want to find a means so that customer supplies were not interrupted.
But really the answer then you should be giving, David, then is you actually haven't got anyone secured as yet,
No.
so you can't give us time.
No.
Right, okay.
Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you.
A family in the area contacted me last night, and they actually asked me to ask you, who's now in charge of water today? Is it the company or the unions?
I think it's the company.
You think it's the company?
It is the company.
It is the company.
It is the company.
Okay, I'll be able to pass that on to them. There are well-placed media reports, certainly this morning, informing the public of a concluding final deal put to the unions last evening. Does that deal include concessions on pensions to these workers?
I think David, we are staying into an area where we're talking about the detail of negotiation, and I think we need to stay away from that.
Let me argue my case, Chairman.
No,
I don't want to hear about this tomorrow because we're not going to have a committee meeting until next week.
I'm ruling that we are not going to get into the detail of what the negotiations are about.
So you're protecting them?
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I am protecting the 7,500 people that were without water over the weekend. So I'm trying to assist the department and NI Water to bring a resolution to this to restore it.
Okay.
And we're not going to go into the detail of what the negotiations are about.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Here.
Yes, here. You back them.
It's back in the 7,000.
You said
no water.
Yes. Sir, you said previously that dialogue with the union was ongoing for over a year, 18 months. Yet your company allowed a situation to run it into the ground, causing absolutely appalling hardship to over 9,000 households, and that could be up to 20,000 people. How can you stand that up this morning?
I can say with great conviction that we worked with the unions, and when concerns were raised to us, we responded to them, and when requests were made of us, we found ways to meet those requests, and the unacceptance, or the line where it's deferral of pension or nothing else, that came just prior to Christmas. That had not been the case up until that point. So in every instance when there was a request, we found a way to help alleviate, to work with the unions, to set out what might be done. So I think in some instances there was a case of an ask that could not be given. There's a very clear executive policy on pension, and removal of the pension was not an option.
Just finally, Sarah, with yourself, and maybe to help these maybe 20,000 people rather than 7,000 people, the overall people who've been affected by this, and who are asking all sorts of questions. And the idea of a committee like this is hopefully to be able to get some answers that we can give them. Who do you think is at fault for these people having been in the situation that they're in? How did this happen? Who's at fault?
I think that there has been a number of circumstances. Industrial action has led to supply interruptions for customers, breakdowns of water treatment works, and the lack of resource to go in and to fix them has meant that customers' water supplies have been interrupted.
So despite there being 18 months of awareness, I don't know exactly when talks or negotiations, doesn't seem to be any negotiations, just talks. But despite all that, whoever was responsible, they couldn't actually have stopped this. Is that what you're saying? So that's why we ended up in this situation. So come back, who's at fault? When everybody knew that the pensions was the big demand, and it was, as has proved, likely to result in work to real or work to normal hours, if you like?
The focus for me and for my team is on getting customer supplies back on.
It's the same focus for everybody, I understand that.
My focus has not been on who's at fault. My focus has been on how do we find a way with the unions to ensure that Northern Ireland has full access to its drinking water supply, and how do we find a way with our own
We're
staff.
likely to find out who's at fault following the Minister's review. That's going to tell us. Okay. I wonder, Minister, I'm very grateful that you're here and for your time. You'll know I'm not comfortable with this, because you and I have known each other over a long time, and there are many situations I can think of where we'd go over the ditch together. But I wouldn't go over the ditch with you on this one, and I think you know that. You may argue...
At least I know, I think.
Pardon?
At least I now know. I now know what I suspected.
Well, that would be a high degree of the integrity of our friendship, in that you would know.
Either you go over the ditch.
I don't
Right,
think
members.
you'll go on any ditch with this, John.
We'll stick to the
They're
question.
different, only in the West.
We'll stick to the question, members.
Minister, you may argue that none of this is your fault. I think fault is a high element in public interest, because that's really going to be what the inquest will focus on. But this has happened under your own watch. People have been subjected, as you heard, to unbearable stress, unacceptable hardship. People that have contacted me have been young families, and pensioners, farmers, businesses, as we heard. And they all feel treated badly, they feel let down, they feel abandoned, bewildered, and above all else, they are angry. Those people in contact with me are despondent. I've got to put it to you that under your responsibility, a situation was allowed to happen and subsequently deteriorate. Will you give this committee and the people that I'm referring to who are suffering a good reason why you haven't resigned from your office?
Well, thank you, Mr. McNary, for your contribution, and I think we had some wind of this through the public media, what your view was, so it's of no great surprise. My role in this as Minister, my focus has been throughout the misery that has been inflicted upon the people that you've mentioned, and that's where my focus remains. And aside from the issue of political argy-bargy, I'm more interested in making sure that we get a resolution to this, and I say that to you respectfully, and I hope that everyone is working to the same way. I believe that I have discharged my responsibilities responsibly and fully. I also believe that I have taken active engagement and interest in this issue from day one, and that continues to be the case. I have not sought to hide. I have not sought to run for cover or seek the protection of others or push others to a microphone or whatever. That is not my nature, and I think you know me well enough to accept that. And I believe that I have discharged my responsibilities, but those responsibilities are not yet completed, and will not be completed in respect of this until this dispute is resolved and that water is restored as it should be to every household and business and home in this province.
Thank you for that, Minister, and I appreciate what you're saying. We have a difference of opinion. I have lost confidence in your ability as a Minister. Could I just finally ask you, was yesterday the only time that you stepped in and issued an ultimatum to both the company and the union?
No, in all of my discussions, even from the first opportunity and engagement that I had with trade unions and indeed with the company on this issue, I was absolutely clear. And seized of the importance of it because I knew the potential impacts. I realised.
Would it be right to say that if you'd given previous ultimatums, which you are suggesting, that they ignored those ultimatums and that maybe perhaps you had been forced into a position where yesterday was a final ultimatum?
Well, we need to wait to see what the outcome of today is, and let's see that. That's my focus throughout, from its earliest, has been to resolve this as quickly and as speedily as possible, not just in December when with that early engagement with trade unions and the company, not just in the run-up to Christmas with contact that led to the protocol being put in place, which at least gives some relief in the circumstances, and not least through the period of January that we've come through. And so I've been dedicated to this, as you would expect me to be, as the Minister for Regional Development, and that's what I will continue to work at until this is successfully resolved and satisfactorily resolved.
Just finally, your Permanent Secretary, Mr. May, said earlier in answer to one of my questions that the Department's stance on pensions was clearly not to make any concessions. Can I ask you as Minister, is that your position today?
It is my position, and it is the position of the Executive.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sean, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back briefly to the private versus public and why, because it has been east versus west. Now it's come to light that it's why is there a private service company in the east and public in the west. Just, I think it needs greater explanation.
At a time some years ago and before my time in LI Water, there were a number of water treatment works that required significant capital investment, so they required a lot of money to be spent on them to make sure that their output was to drinking water standards. So the drinking water quality standards had raised. Significant investment was required in order to do that, and the government at the time couldn't afford it. And set up these public-private partnerships such that that capital investment came from outside of government. They refurbished the water treatment works, and long-term contracts were put in place for the water to be procured, and that is what exists at the minute. Now, the largest of those is very firmly in the east, but in the northwest, some of these do feed into the northwest on a smaller scale. So there are 5 of these works around Northern Ireland, but the largest one is indeed feeding water into the east.
And how long are those contracts?
They're 25-year contracts, and we are
about 5 years into the contract.
And is that process of PPs ended now?
Well, those contracts were set up, and there is no plans for further contracts.
Sarah, can I take you back to something, and I was touching this earlier, about the 1,260 and there's 700 in terms of industrial action. Of the 700, so I take it the 1,260 workforce you're talking about, given one of your answers, and it's just dawning on me now that that's your whole workforce?
Yes, it is.
Of the 700 who are out in industrial action, how many of those are actually industrial staff?
Well, I think what I said was there are over 700 union members.
Yeah.
This industrial action has been taken by the Water Group of Trade Unions, which comprise 3 unions, NIPSA, Unite and GMB. Our industrial workforce is in the region of 500, and I don't know, and almost all of those 500 will be in a union. Okay. But not exclusively all of the 500. And all of the 500 are taking industrial action? Well, the ballot was very strongly supported. No, but is all of the 500 in industrial action? There may have been, there will have been some who will have worked, but we don't have necessarily a roll call. You don't have a roll call for everyone who said, yes, I'm taking action or I'm not. Well, I would have expected you to know how many are actually part of the industrial action or otherwise. So of the 500 industrial staff, how many of them actually would have been doing the flexible working? on-call
Yes.
arrangements. There are 61 on-call, well, there were 61 on-call rotas for the industrial staff, and the non-industrial staff had in around 30 rotas across. Remember, our activities cover water production, wastewater treatment,
Yeah.
M&E.
So are we talking about a total staff of 91 who are doing the flexible working?
No, those are the rotas, and then each rota will be populated by a team of people.
So how many people are we talking about?
Across the company, you're talking hundreds.
How many?
I don't have those figures.
Could you get us those figures? Okay. Joe, did you want back in?
Not really, Chairman, no.
Okay. Okay, Minister and your team, can I thank you for coming today? I think maybe summing up what, in terms of where David was at about the blame game, it's not about the blame game really at the moment. We think we'll have our time for that maybe in the next couple of weeks if you get a resolution. However, I mean, what all of us want around this table, and I mean, I'm sure yourselves included, is to see water restored to everyone and no interruption and people back to work. However, I mean, and I am going to be critical, the contingencies between yourself and the department haven't been adequate, where you have a situation, particularly in the rural areas, and as I did say earlier, people in isolated rural areas with water bowsers that are frozen and roads that are not graded. So I think really, Minister, whenever you have commissioned that piece of work in relation to NI Water, I think you should have an independent review of your own organisation from yourself down and find out how your organisation, or whether it could have worked more effectively, and whether your contingencies in terms of this crisis were up to scratch or otherwise. But this is one of those cases I will get the last say. You get the last say yesterday, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we'll move to agenda item number 3, which is any other business, and the date and time of next meeting.
Could I ask, is there any other business? In light of the situation unresolved, but possibly some enlightenment on it during the day, would it be your wish and the members' wish that we could reconvene to consider what the position is and what may be necessary for us to consider in favour of the public? At the moment, this is sitting in abeyance. I don't think that we can say hip hip hooray if the workers are back at work, today or tomorrow, because I think there's some other things we need to find out. But it's just a matter for yourself. I certainly would like to be more informed than relying on the media.
I mean, the sentiments of what you're saying sounds perfectly sound. However, I think if we do get back, we're putting ourselves in that position that we are trying to interfere with the negotiation process. I think the process of information, I think that point's well made, and I think maybe the clerk could contact the department and see if we could be informed prior to the media in terms of what that outcome may be. You talk about the hip hip hooray, and I think it's unfortunate I just heard that door open when the officials left the right in a very jovial manner. I don't know if you heard the laughs, but I certainly heard the laughs in here. And I don't think it's a laughing matter that there's thousands of people without water. So whoever that was, I think is very irresponsible of them, and I think it was ill-judged. I'm not accusing anyone.
There was a laugh that was shared with the whole lot of them going out there, and I think it just shows the contempt that they had for this committee, as they always do.
Yeah. Ross, sorry.
Chair, Joe has mentioned Loch Braden and various other areas. Could we actually visit Loch Braden treatment works or some other one? I've never been to one of these, and I would like to go and see the facility if that is at all.
You can go any day.
Sorry?
You can go any day.
Well, I think we as a committee should go, but I'm asking that.
Is that far away?
I say, I accept that if there was laughter, but we don't know, of course,
members. Sorry, Ross.
We don't know who was laughing in the corridor, and clearly it's wrong. But if we find out who, well, good, it is certainly right. If it were the team to criticise it, but if it weren't.
Oh, and that's why I made the point. I don't know who was responsible, but it was whenever they were going out the door. So it was someone who was in this room went out in a very jovial manner. So we'll maybe make inquiries from the
a lot of people left, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not making any inference on who it was. what the point I'm making is that they left this meeting, which, I mean, we are serious about this. There is people who've been interrupted, and there's no excuse for people to leave this room jovial today in terms of that. So I'm not making any inference in who it was. You were next, Cathal, sorry.
Chair, just before this weekend approached, I asked a fortnight ago about two difficulties that were particularly within the Cowhill treatment works at the meeting here, and also about the arrangements with private contractors and the cover over Christmas. And I'm just wondering, have we got a reply for those, or are we is that in the process? And this was before this broke last week.
The normal process would be that the Parliament gives a 10 working days for responding to committee queries, and that would be up tomorrow.
Today?
No, it would be tomorrow.
So once you get it, even
once we get it,
we're not convening, but I mean, if
no, that's okay. No, just
well, I mean, we may convene again, but in the absence of that, if the clerk would forward that to you, and even indeed the other members.
It showed there was difficulties just before the last weekend.
Absolutely, so. Chris.
Chair, there's obviously a number of serious and fundamental issues that come out of the meeting today. The most urgent is re-establishing supply, obviously, and I'm happy to reconvene for any meeting in relation to that issue, given the seriousness of that for the customers themselves. But there are big issues around governance and finance for NI Water clearly going forward, and I think as well for executive contingency planning. And I think, given much of that falls to the DRD Minister, that this committee needs to think seriously about how it properly scrutinises and consider those fundamental issues. It's not for today, but I think it is important that we forward work plan that at some point in time.
Yeah, I think that's a point well made. So, I mean, if the clerk could bear that in mind, and I don't think it's something we should push off. I think it's something that we should bring forward and try and fit that in as soon as possible, because whether it's the governance for this or some of the other issues that we've seen in the last number of weeks, there definitely seems to be a problem within the department and other arm's length bodies within the department. So if you can programme that in. Any other members before we close? Members, just to remind you, next Tuesday we're meeting the committees in relation to the inquiry to the coal into London Dairy Track, and just to remind members that we will be taking the train, and there will be some interviews taking place in that with some of the passengers before the main meeting, which actually takes place the next morning. Declare the meeting now closed.
This is an